Week. I'm Stu Ellis. I'll be taking care of the chores today, even winding up in a rocking chair. We've got a great program for you. There's news about 2 pipelines now planned to cross through central Illinois farmland. We'll look at La Nina's impact on South American weather and what that did to the markets this week. We'll have a new feature beginning in today's program, and we have a new state FSA director, and you'll meet him right now.
Welcome to Midwest Ag This Week with host Stu Ellis.
Well, it took nearly a year, but the USDA now has a state executive director in place for the Illinois Farm Service Agency. Scott Halpin, who farms in Grundy and Kendall County, southwest of Chicago, began his new duties January 3rd, but worked from home until he was sworn in over a Zoom meeting. He's taking on an agency without leadership for the past year.
I've spent so many years with non-for-profits and the Farm Bureau and other leadership things, as my bio mentioned, with soil and water and stuff. I just saw this as a new challenge. Whenever the administration changes over, there's an opportunity here, and that opportunity presented itself, so I was looking forward to trying something different. I think there's some challenges to that goes along with that, but there's also some opportunities. So the challenges is that I'm not intimately familiar with the whole FSA organization, but has been shared with me with some staff and some other key people that maybe an outside look is a good thing sometimes. So right now, I'm looking at it as a very positive thing and just trying to soak everything in and learn as much as I can as quick as I can. The one thing that's this pandemic that's another fallout of this pandemic is we were not able to go out there and do what they call the traditional swearing in. We did it all via Teams meetings and Zooms, like the rest of these last 2 years we've been operating under. So had to make adjustments, but we also had to get this process going. So that's the times that we're in right now. I mean, aside from myself and what we've talked about so far, I think what's really important is to know that these county offices are open and they're doing business. I know that we're not fully staffed and things aren't the way we've traditionally ran our FSA offices throughout the counties. We've been we're getting direction literally by the minute for how we're supposed to conduct these offices, but they are open. Most of them are at a lower level staffing, but if they can't help you at the counter or in person, we're doing things virtually somehow. We're getting business done is the bottom line, is make sure you know that those offices are open and conducting business.
Scott's a great guy, known him for a long time, and he'll take care of things. All farmers feed people. Corn, soybeans, of course, processed into food products. Hogs and cattle become pork and beef cuts in the meat case. But there's a special organization that was created by a farmer to feed the hungry. And upon his retirement, another farmer came forward to run the Midwest Food Bank at Morton, where nearly $400 million worth of food was collected and distributed last year.
We're in the Midwest Food Bank at Morton, and with me is Eric Hodel, and Eric is the Chief Executive Officer, and you've got a ton of food here that you've acquired for people in need.
Yeah, that's correct. Our basic business model is with the financial donations that we get, and then we go out and we get this food. We send our volunteer drivers with tractor trailers to go to different businesses, different companies, different food processors, and food that they have excess or overrun or the supply chain inefficiencies, we bring that into Midwest Food Bank into our warehouse. We store it, we package it, we organize it, and then our agencies come on a weekly basis and pick up the food to take back and serve the individuals in need in their community.
You grew up on a farm, you're farming now. How does that intertwine with what you are doing?
Yeah, it's about feeding people. And certainly from a farm perspective, we're raising grains and animals to feed people that are able to purchase that at a grocery store. From a food bank perspective, it's for people that aren't able to purchase it from a grocery store because they have a financial hardship or they don't have the ability to to get to a store and to be able to purchase those items. So the end goal is the same, to feed people, but it's a different channel to get there. We have 10 Midwest Food Bank locations across the U.S. and 2 locations internationally. We serve over 2,000 agencies. To them, we serve and distribute $380 million of food on an annual basis. And so those are some of the basics.
Eric calls them basics. I think they're mind-blowing statistics and the service that Midwest Food Bank provides.
Mind-blowing statistic.
It is.
$380 million worth of food last year.
And you were just standing inside that giant warehouse. There's a lot of food there.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's indescribable, I'll say.
Well, some places have actually kind of seen that amount of snow in the Mountain West. We're going to
yes.
start with our snow depth right now, Stu. And what you're going to see here is that, a lot of the country actually has not really seen very much snow. But off to the west, where there's been a tremendous, long-standing drought, which is still there, a nice dent has been able to be put into it, especially across the Sierra Nevada of California. Now, back off more towards the east across the Midwest, a lot of locations that normally would be seeing some snow, or at least have seen more snow in normal years, really are not lacking that currently. So our snow depth across a lot of the Midwest is a little lower than usual. Our drought monitor does kind of reflect a bit of that, especially across a lot of the central part of the country. Again, California has been able to erase a lot of that exceptional drought category that they have dealt with for so long. So that's, again, an improvement, but a lot of the country still remains a little dry. And in fact, even in the Midwest, we've got okay conditions, at least according to the map, but the topsoil pretty dry across the area too. So just take note of that. Unfortunately, in terms of precipitation, not really a whole lot of it can be expected. Once we have our system that comes through this weekend, that'll drop our snow, and that's going to be pretty light across a lot of the state of Illinois. We're going to then be looking at a pretty dry forecast there after that. So this system will be driving down to the south, and again, most of the heavy snow will be seen across Iowa and Missouri and far western Illinois. A lot of the central part of the state will remain actually seeing fairly low numbers, if not even being pretty dry. That low is then going to kind of boomerang down and then go up the east coast, providing them with probably a lot of snowfall up that direction. But in terms of any snowfall for the Midwest, it does really do kind of one of those dips there and misses out, and we miss out on quite a bit of that. We'll then be looking at a little bit more of a quiet trend as high pressure begins to settle in. And in terms of any rainfall amounts, really not going to be there. So whatever we would have in the form of our snow will be coming in as that amount of moisture. 8 to 14 day outlook, January 21st to the 27th. Cooler than normal, and then, Stu, we still have some dry conditions expected for the end of the month too. So cold and dry is kind of how things are going to be looking like we're going to end the month of January. But a little bit of some snow moving through this weekend. We'll kind of watch how that plays out.
And some dry fields out there.
Yes.
Under some wheat that's growing out and some cover crops coming up. 2 pipelines now. Count them. 1, 2, coming right up.
Welcome back to Midwest Ag This Week.
We've told you about a new pipeline bringing CO2, carbon dioxide, into central Illinois from fertilizer and ethanol plants in the western Corn Belt. Representatives of Heartland Greenway, the pipeline route, and Navigator Pipeline Construction met yesterday with landowners in west central Illinois. Landowners were polite at Jacksonville, unlike some raucous sessions that occurred recently in Iowa. Elizabeth Burns-Thompson's the spokesperson.
I enjoy farmers across the whole footprint. The meeting structure is quite a bit different from state to state. Iowa does have a little bit of a different process. The meetings that we're holding here in Illinois are not necessarily required at this stage of the process, but we did think it was important that landowners across the whole footprint are given information in somewhat of a uniform fashion.
Where are we on the eminent domain issue?
Too early. We want this, again, that's a part of the process potentially, but it's not something that we want to do. We want this project to be voluntary. Voluntary surveys, voluntary easements. We can't do any of the easement acquiring until we have a permit on file, or a permit application, I should say, on file with the Illinois Commerce Commission.
One of the Morgan County farmers in the proposed path of the pipeline is Dale Haddon.
Their maps are not very detailed, so it's hard to drill down to see, exactly where it goes across a parcel of ground that you're, operating. That's what I'm hoping to find out here in a little bit as the line subsides at one of these tables to see, because each landowner has specific issues on each tract of ground that they know, well, I've got a 24-inch tile main that goes through that particular area, or I've got a water line to the group of cows out in the pasture. That we want to make sure we understand their ramifications and how that would impact us going forward if they do choose to go forward with the project.
Earlier this week, ADM pulled out of the project to build its own pipeline to bring CO2 from Iowa into its sequestration sites adjacent to the Farm Progress Show site.
Is the project impacted by the loss of ADM's Clinton and Cedar Rapids plants not participating in this?
So the announcement earlier this week does change a bit of the footprint of the project, especially in the eastern Iowa segment. Our teams are looking at reevaluating, restructuring what that lateral looks like.
We'll have to see what that means. Well, we'll take a look at La Nina, because this La Nina has been really shifting around in South America. It's wrenched a few things back and forth, and potential weather threats this year. Drought in Argentina, southern states of Brazil has cut yields, while Mato Grosso has been wet. And there's no guarantee it's going to remain that way for the second crop of corn. Eric Snodgrass says farmers in South America are too wet in the north, too dry in the south.
They are, and there's some mid-January precipitation coming in, but it's a very limited area. It's maybe part of Rio Grande do Sul over toward, parts of Uruguay, northern Argentina, and Paraguay. That's a pretty narrow band. You get north of there, back into Paraná, Sao Paulo, over toward, even up as far north and east as Minas Gerais. Those areas are going over dry. Now, Mato Grosso, the big dog down there, they're dry right now. They have been quite wet, very wet, but they're going to be dry probably through much of the rest of January. That's going to help them get that crop out fast and get the safrinha crop planted. But the moisture's got to come back for that safrinha crop to do well, because they need that moisture routine. I mean, just remember, Mato Grosso on average gets between 3.5 and 4.5 inches of rain a week. So if they don't get that, they're going to start worrying about drought as well. You get south of all of that in Argentina, we saw crop conditions reports really drop. We've seen drought stresses there, and the storms that are trying to come through there, they're just like what we get here in summer. Some people get the rain and some people don't.
The folks in Mato Grosso have also been complaining about too much rain that's caused some sprouting in the beans and some rotting in the beans, and that's going to really decrease quality, and that's a concern to exporters.
Sure, and you're right, because most of this growing season in Mato Grosso, and we call that the northern and northeastern growing areas, boy, they were super wet, flooding problems. They were as wet as the south was dry.
And all of that weather that's happening down there certainly was reflected in the markets this last week. Sherm Newland is with us. Good afternoon, Sherm. And,
good afternoon, Stu.
We certainly had a data dump from the USDA on Wednesday, and a lot of things we've got to talk about.
Yes, we did. Yeah, they had a lot of numbers came out all at once. Didn't move the market a lot, but going down the list, we had yield production for corn was left at 177. Production was at a little over 15 billion bushels. Bean yield was raised just a little bit to 51.4 bushels per acre, and production total of 4.435. That gave us an ending stock number of 1.45 billion for corn. That's up 47 million on a little bit of increase in acres. So that's how we got about that number. The bean carryout was only raised 10 million bushel, put it at 350 million bushel. And the wheat carryout was at 628. Average price for corn was stated at 545. It was interesting to see that they did raise the average price for soybeans this year, 50 cents to $12.60.
Now, we've got USDA also released its estimate of what's going on in South America. They dropped it a little bit from what they had, but not a whole lot.
Yes, yeah, they put the Argentine crop at 54 million metric ton for corn, and the Brazil crop at 115 million metric ton. That's down 3 million metric ton from December. What was interesting, though, they made a bigger drop in the soybean numbers, total between the two countries of almost 8 million metric ton. So that was a nice little surprise to the market.
Now the Brazilian version of USDA, CONAB, also dropped theirs a little bit. A lot of the other consultancies in South America have really been plummeting downward, but CONAB didn't go quite as far as the other ones do, and they and USDA are somewhere fairly equal at this point, I think.
Right. They only dropped at about 4 million metric ton, and that's kind of what they expected USDA to do.
All right. Sherm, we appreciate you helping out. We'll see you in a few weeks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we'll see you back to talk about managing your risk, your return on investment by agronomy. And a question for you. How do you make decisions on crop inputs? It may result from a neighbor's recommendation, some pointed advertising, a gift from a seed company or an ag retailer. It may also result from success over the years, and the latter is the key for Kyle Meese. He's the chief agronomist for United Prairie Cooperative, and after his winter agronomy meeting, overloaded with information about the performance of myriads of crop inputs, Meese provided the key to his primary management recommendations. In essence, look at all the results, not just yield, from all recent years, and use those to make your decision for 2022. Kyle, as you look at your history of all of your research, farmers basically have a lot of that on their own. Absolutely. How do they aggregate that into something that's going to help their ROI for 2022?
Sure, absolutely. So, I say this all the time, and every year is going to bring new challenges. It's going to bring, this year, new input prices that we've never seen before. Marketing prices are changing on a daily basis. So what I tried to do is, in 2015 is the first year we started working on a research farm. It wasn't the first year we started doing research just on a research farm, and we started creating our books to compile all that data into one. On our 2021 results book, what I did is I wanted to give everyone the ability to look back at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Also look at 2021 here and see what products made sense then, and do those products still make sense to this day. There's some things in there that absolutely will. The market adjustments, whether it's an input price or whether it's a marketing price, may have changed some, whether it's positive or negative. That product's still showing return on investment, but there's other products that may not make sense. We really have to go back and use our data to the fullest to make sure we're implementing the right steps into 2022.
What's the best way to do that other than just looking at yield?
Well, so yields is a component of it, but for me, I'm a numbers guy just as well. So I've got spreadsheets upon spreadsheets galore that's always showing variables. Okay, what if, I always plan for the worst but hope for the best. What if corn all of a sudden goes down to $4.50, and what if beans are now $10 beans? How's that change versus if they're $15 beans and $6 corn? Looking at that's a piece of the puzzle. The other thing is just if you're not aggregating your data over time, I encourage you to start that at this point in time. There's a lot of growers we work with. They look at things on a field by field basis. It's not a cumulative. I think as we move forward, micromanaging individual fields or maybe areas in those fields is probably going to become more important and necessary rather than hit the easy button and we do the same thing across everything.
Great ideas from Kyle Meese at United Prairie. Pull up your rocking chair. Join us. We're going to add a new element to our program that'll focus on the infrastructure of Illinois agriculture. Dozens of organizations out there that help oil this great food machine. Today we begin with one that looks after the great prairie soils in the Prairie State.
We're on the front porch of the Association of Illinois Soil and Water Conservation Districts. This is Grant Hammer. Grant's the director of that. And tell me what the Association of Illinois Soil and Water Conservation Districts is. What is it?
Sure. So it's a grassroots organization created in 1948. It's got its roots in the great ecological disaster that's known as the American Great Dust Bowl. when the soil conservation movement really took hold. This is in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And as a result, Congress passed legislation enabling states to set up soil and water conservation districts to combat, soil erosion issues that were contributing to the Great Dust Bowl. Illinois formed its state association in 1948 and set up its soil and water conservation districts at that time as well. And so the association represents soil and water conservation districts on policy matters. We help provide training and information and so forth to our member districts.
And how many are there?
There's 97 districts in Illinois.
Wow, that's almost one per county.
That's correct. We cover all corners of the state. We're always working on the STAR program. That's Saving Tomorrow's Agriculture Resources.
Right, that's a great one.
That's a homegrown program to Central Illinois farmers who also happen to serve on the boards of their local soil and water conservation district.
Steve and Joe over in
Steve and Joe, that's right. Yep, you're familiar. Wanted to do something proactive to help, further the goals of the state's nutrient loss reduction strategy. And as a result, they put together kind of this fledgling STAR program. And it's essentially a conservation planning tool, to help farmers evaluate the amount of conservation they've got in their own operations. And then it provides them pointers and so forth with more information on how to, increase conservation in their own operations.
Well, that nutrient loss issue is going to become more and more important, and I think if anybody is interested in that or soil conservation, you can easily be part of the activities in your local district. Just find where your local district is and tell them hello, you'd like to be there.
Absolutely.
Well, that concludes this edition of Midwest Ag This Week. We hope you've benefited from some of the information that you heard and will share it with your farming colleagues. We hope you'll join us at this time again next week. I'm Stu Ellis.